Colonel Hyder, Battle Group 5, Airborne, has been allocated to the North Atlantic theater of this conflict. Colonel Maldini, Battle Group 4, Airborne, has been assigned to the North Atlantic theater of this conflict. Colonel Anaviska, Battle Group 8, Mechanized, has been assigned to the North Atlantic theater of this conflict. Colonel Dubois, Battle Group 16, Mechanized, has been assigned to the North Atlantic theater of this conflict. Colonel Thurber, Battle Group 15, Armored, has been assigned to the North Atlantic theater of this conflict. Colonel Beckenbauer, Battle Group 22, Armored, has been assigned to the North Atlantic theater of this conflict. Colonel Schweider, Battle Group 12, Tactical, has been assigned to the North Atlantic theater of this conflict. Colonel Duberry, Battle Group 10, Tactical, has been assigned to the North Atlantic theater of this conflict. Colonel Yeager, Battle Group 20, Assault, has been assigned to the North Atlantic theater of this conflict. Colonel Dela, Battle Group 28, Assault, has been assigned to the North Atlantic theater of this conflict. Colonel Moreau, Battle Group 6, Assault, has been assigned to the North Atlantic theater of this conflict. As such, you are authorized to log on to the strategic display at any time to view the progress of our campaign and to issue deployment recommendations. Now, a look at current operations. The Colonel is finally gracing us with his presence, I see. The Colonel has finally logged on. Perhaps he will even deign to fight a battle. The Colonel has finally logged on. Every day he is absent weakens the forces of Europa. The Colonel has finally logged on after a long absence. It seems even commanders are capable of desertion. The Colonel has finally logged on after a long absence. Perhaps now he will prosecute our campaign with a modicum of dedication. The Colonel has finally logged on after a long absence. History excoriates those who shirk their duties. Congratulations, Colonel. You fulfilled expectations, Colonel. You executed the plan of action with dispatch, Colonel. You conducted your battle well, Colonel. A fine execution of the battle plan, Colonel. A performance worthy of the Enforcer's Corps, Colonel. Well done, Colonel. You achieved a favorable outcome, Colonel. The Americans were defeated unambiguously. The Americans were made to know defeat. The Americans have been disgraced. The Americans have been humbled. The Americans were bested on the field of battle. The Americans were made to know shame. The Russians have been debased. The Russians were made to know their inadequacy. The Russians were brought low on the field of battle. The Russians were defeated, and soundly. The Russians were humiliated. The Russians were made to pay a heavy price. The terrorist threat was eliminated. The Green Brigades were euthanized like mad dogs. The Green Brigades were vanquished using the very technologies they abhor. I expect better from my commanders, Colonel. I expect victories, Colonel. You let the Americans defame your battle group. You were ineffectual against the Americans, Colonel. Colonel, the Americans embarrassed you today. You made many mistakes, Colonel. And the Americans exploited every one of them. Colonel, you let the Americans toy with you today. Colonel, your engagement against the Russians was an embarrassment. Colonel, you bungled your execution of the battle plan and gave the Russians a victory. Colonel, that was not a performance befitting an officer of the Enforcer's Corps. Colonel, the Russians dishonored you on the field today. The Russians bested you, Colonel, and with little difficulty. Colonel, the Russians made you look like a rank amateur. Colonel, to be routed by the Green Brigades is the ultimate disgrace. Colonel, to see an Enforcer's battle group defeated by mere terrorists is a disgusting sight. You have been defeated by amateurs, Colonel. By amateurs. The strategic display is updating now. This is how the forces of Europa fared over the past week. This is what the Enforcer's Corps achieved over the past week. This is how the Enforcer's Corps performed the past week. Here are the results of the past week's operations. Here are the outcomes of the past week's operations. Here we see the results of the past week's engagements. Here is what occurred. Here we see all operational results from the past week. Excellent progress was made over the past week. Europa dominated her enemies this past week. An exemplary week for the Enforcer's Corps. A week of commendable efforts. A week that saw us achieve many victories. The Enforcer's Corps performed well over the past week. Europa has made solid progress over the past week. It was a week that went according to plan more often than not. Strategically, the past week was a stalemate. Victories were cancelled out by defeats in equal measure. The past week cost Europa as much as it gained. We failed to achieve significant progress over the past week. The past week did not advance Europa's cause. The past week was a folio of defeats. The past week was an embarrassment. The past week was a gift to our adversaries. The past week was a series of losses. The past week set back Europa's cause. The past week was disastrous. The past week was a debacle. The past week dishonored the Enforcers Corps. The week began poorly and did nothing to improve. The past week was a momentous one for the Enforcers Corps. We won every engagement we fought. The Americans fought with steely determination this past week, winning every engagement they fought. The Russians surpassed themselves this past week. They won every engagement they fought. The past week was a disgrace. The Enforcers Corps lost every engagement it fought. The Americans embarrassed themselves over the past week. They lost every engagement they fought. The Russians humiliated themselves over the past week, losing every engagement they fought. We made progress in America. We fought well on the American front. The Enforcers fought well in America. We took significant losses in America. There were setbacks in the eastern U.S. We made a poor showing on the American front. Homeland engagements favored us. We fought well for our homeland. We distinguished ourselves on native soil. We showed martial prowess on native soil. We did well on European soil. We were dishonored on native soil. We took losses in the homeland. We fared poorly on European soil. We were made to look like amateurs on native soil. We failed to win honor in the homeland. We fought well in Eastern Europe. We won engagements in Eastern Europe. We achieved results in Eastern Europe. We lost engagements in Eastern Europe. We fought badly in Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe went badly. We won battles for key uplink sites. We denied the enemy of key uplink sites. We won engagements at key uplink sites. We advanced Europa's signal dominance. We bested the enemy at key uplink sites. We drove the enemy from key uplink sites. We lost the fight for key uplink clusters. We lost battles at key uplink sites. The enemy won battles at key uplink sites. The enemy won engagements for uplink sites. The enemy thwarted us at key uplink sites. We lost battles for key uplink sites. We inflicted heavy losses. We exacted a heavy toll. We dominated the enemy in key sectors. We smote the enemy in key sectors. We prevailed in key sectors by force of arms. We drove off the enemy in key sectors. We suffered heavy casualties. The enemy prevailed in key sectors. We lost battles for key sectors. We lost major engagements. The enemy inflicted heavy casualties. We were defeated in key sectors. We sabotaged one of their bases. They sabotaged one of our bases. We secured an air base. We lost control of an air base. We secured an army base. We lost control of an army base. We secured a port. We lost control of a port. We kept our air cover. We kept our troop support. We retained our port. The enemy is in striking distance of Paris. The Enforcers Corps will now face its greatest test. I have ordered all remaining civilians to evacuate. We have established an airhead in Paris. We failed to establish a drop zone in Paris. The latest battle for Paris has concluded. The enemy's assault on Paris has been thwarted. The enemy's attempt to capture Paris has been repulsed. Paris is lost. I have fulfilled my vow and restored Paris to her people. I have fulfilled my vow and restored Paris to the heart of Europa. I fulfilled my vow. Paris is liberated. My attempts to recapture Paris have failed. Paris has traded flags. The battle for Washington, D.C. is about to begin. Civilians are fleeing the city, taking whatever belongings they can carry with them. The Americans established an airhead in Washington. Fighting in Washington has ended. Washington has been claimed for Europa. Washington has fallen. Washington has been taken. My efforts to take Washington have proved in vain. The enemy's assault on Washington has been repelled. The enemy's attempts to take Washington have been repulsed. Washington is lost. Washington has traded flags. The battle for Russia's capital is about to begin. Refugees choked the roads, fleeing the city before the coming storm. The Russians established a drop zone in Moscow. Fighting in Moscow has ended. Moscow has been taken. Moscow has been claimed for Europa. Victory in Moscow. My efforts to capture Moscow have failed. The enemy's assault on Moscow has been thrown back. The enemy's attack on Moscow has been foiled. Moscow is lost. Moscow has traded flags. The Americans have been made to vacate the city. What the Russians once claimed is now ours. The Americans have been dislodged. The Americans have been evicted. The Russian infestation has been cleansed. The Russians have been expelled. The Americans have seized control. It is occupied by the Americans now. The Americans have taken control. The Russians have seized control. The Russians now hold the city. The Russians control it now. America's grasp on the city remains firm. It remains in Russian hands. America's defense of its homelands has failed. From the Mississippi River east, every uplink site has been seized. Though the enemies of Europa have seized every uplink site on our native soil, we will not quit this fight. Russia no longer controls Eastern Europe. Every uplink site has been captured. Americans make for sore losers. If they drop kinetic rods on your forces, retaliate at once with orbital laser strikes. The Defense Ministry has directed us to start making use of high-energy laser satellites, but be forewarned. The use of such weapons invites retaliation. Russia is becoming desperate. If they strike your forces with short-range fuel-air explosive missiles, retaliate at once with orbital laser strikes. That was all. Little else of note, little else. Let us hasten this war to its conclusion, Colonel. Victory is imminent, Colonel. Let us finish this. Europa holds the upper hand, Colonel. Let us wield it as a fist. The war goes well for Europa, Colonel. We hold the strategic initiative, Colonel. Europa has proved her mettle, Colonel. We are winning this war. Europa is on the path to victory, Colonel. Do not sidetrack her. The enemy must be allowed no respite, Colonel. The war goes in Europe's favor, Colonel. Europa is ascendant, Colonel. We must advance, Colonel. Victory is in sight. We have many battles ahead of us, Colonel. We have much to accomplish, Colonel. There is much to do this week, Colonel. There is much to be accomplished, Colonel. There will be no shortage of opportunities to distinguish yourself this week, Colonel. Europa's enemies must be driven from the map, Colonel. To arms, Colonel. We have much to accomplish. To battle, Colonel. Where might you distinguish yourself? The moment of decision, Colonel. The moment of truth, Colonel. Where to strike next? Europe must regain the initiative before it is too late. Europa's position in this war must be reversed, Colonel. The tide must be reversed, Colonel. Europe must win. Europa demands better from us, Colonel. Europa's misfortunes must be reversed, Colonel. The war has turned against Europe, Colonel. This is unacceptable. More than ever, Europa requires us to champion her cause. We must reverse our nation's misfortunes in this war, Colonel. However grave our nation's misfortunes, we shall fight on. Even at the extremities of misfortune, the Enforcers Corps fights on. We must keep alive the dream of a unified Europe, Colonel. Examine the strategic display and issue a deployment recommendation. Consider the operations I have planned in light of your battle group's capabilities. Then issue a deployment recommendation. Examine our imminent deployments and recommend where your battle group would be best suited. Peruse intelligence on upcoming operations. Then issue a deployment recommendation. Examine upcoming operations and issue a deployment recommendation. Review data on upcoming operations and indicate the one best suited to the capabilities of your battle group. I am waiting for a deployment recommendation, Colonel. Review the strategic data and issue a deployment recommendation, Colonel. Issue a deployment recommendation, Colonel. Colonel, issue a deployment recommendation, or I will begin to think you have a hard time making decisions. Colonel, review current operation and recommend a deployment. Now, in the eastern U.S., in America, here in our homelands, here in Europa, here on native soil, in Europa, in the homelands, on native soil, in Eastern Europe, we will take and hold key uplink sites. We will seize uplink sites, achieving full spectrum dominance. I have targeted key uplink sites for offensive operations. We will capture uplinks and turn them against the enemy. We will seize uplink sites and make good use of them. We will break the enemy in multiple sectors. We will seize territory in multiple sectors. I am launching major offensives in multiple sectors. We will outfight and overcome the enemy in multiple sectors. We will storm the enemy's defenses in multiple sectors. We will assault and occupy multiple sectors by force of arms. We will seize multiple uplink sites. We will retake the Ramstein Air Base. We will seize the Rovaniemi Air Base. We will seize Grissom Air Base. We will take and hold Maxwell Air Base. We will capture the Brooklyn Offshore Base. We will recapture the port of Copenhagen. We will capture the port of Sevastopol. We will take and hold Fort Campbell Army Base. We will recapture Lesito Army Base. We will take and hold Fort Levski Army Base. We will sabotage the air base here. We will execute a sabotage raid on the air base here. I have ordered a sabotage raid on the air base here. We will sabotage the army base here. We will execute a sabotage raid on the army base here. I have ordered a sabotage raid on the army base here. We are sabotaging the port here. We will sabotage the port here. We are going to sabotage the port here. The enemy is focusing attacks on our uplink sites. We have multiple uplink sites under attack. Multiple uplink sites are under attack. Multiple uplink sites must be defended. The enemy is trying to seize key uplink sites. The enemy is mounting attacks on on uplink sites. The enemy is assaulting our defenses in multiple sectors. The enemy is launching major offensive operations against us. The enemy is launching attacks on multiple sectors. We will stand our ground in multiple sectors. Enemy offensives must be repulsed in multiple sectors. The enemy seeks to overwhelm us in multiple sectors. Ramstein Air Base is under attack. Rovaniemi Air Base is under attack. Grissom Air Force Base is under attack. Maxwell Air Force Base is under attack. They are attacking the Brooklyn offshore base. They are attacking the port of Copenhagen. They are attacking the port of Sevastopol. Fort Campbell Army Base is under attack. Lesito Army Base is under attack. Fort Levski Army Base is under attack. The enemy cannot be allowed to sabotage it. We cannot afford a lapse in its strategic benefits. The enemy must not be allowed to take it offline. The battle for Washington is our primary concern. The battle for Washington is the key engagement. The battle for Washington is our main effort. The battle for Paris is our maximum effort. The absolute priority is the battle for Paris. Our efforts are focused on the battle for Paris. The battle for Moscow is receiving full attention. The key engagement is the battle for Moscow. The battle for Moscow is our priority. We must secure a drop zone and take the city back. We must establish a drop zone where I can land an assault force to liberate the city. The city's liberation cannot begin until we secure a drop zone. The enemy is attempting to establish a drop zone there. The enemy is attempting to secure a drop zone for a heavy assault force. The enemy is attempting to establish a drop zone for a liberation force. We will crash the city's uplinks and seize them to our advantage. The Russians will pulse-crash the city's uplinks and rush in to seize them. The Americans will pulse-crash the city's uplinks and rush in to seize them. Now he who holds the uplinks will be the victor. Now victory will go to whoever can seize the uplinks. Uplinks are the focus. Domination of the electromagnetic spectrum. The victor will be whoever can seize enough uplinks to achieve full spectrum capability. Now everything depends on who can seize the uplinks. Last week the Russians pushed us back. Last week the Russians forced us back. Last week the Russians drove us back. Last week the Americans pushed us back. Last week the Americans forced us back. Last week the Americans drove us back. Last week the Russians were driven back. Last week the Russians were pushed back. Last week the Russians were forced back. Last week the Americans were driven back. Last week the Americans were pushed back. Last week the Americans were forced back. It will be a memorable clash. A pitched battle. Street by street. It will be a battle for the streets at close range. The fighting will be house to house. There will be no mercy. We will be fighting them in the streets at close quarters. Our objective is simple. Annihilate all enemy forces in the city. Our objective now is attrition. Killing in its purest form. We must exact a heavy toll on enemy forces in the city. We will be clashing in force and at close range. Now we must break their final assault. It is an opportunity to seize glory. The enemy has nowhere left to run. We will finish him. Now it is time to annihilate their last remnants. We have them in check. This is checkmate. No major operations are planned for the week. No major deployments are planned. The fighting will be elsewhere. We have no major operations planned at the present time. Colonel, the war is over, and I have failed. In life, I sought to emulate the great commanders of antiquity, of Rome in particular. In defeat, I see no reason to break from this ethic. To fall on one's sword is an honorable death, Colonel. You served me faithfully, and I thank you for your loyalty. For the dream that was Europa, Colonel, may we all find peace. Colonel, the war is over, and the European Federation is the victor. The torch of our civilization, lit scarcely 2 years ago, has weathered the tempest of a global conflict to burn as a solitary beacon of hope for all mankind. We are the heroes of this new era. Fighting at my side, you have achieved glory, even perhaps immortality. For Europa, Colonel, victory always.